Brethren, happy Sabbath. Welcome to the Friday night Sabbath Eve Bible study for this 25th day of the third month on God's holy sacred calendar. On the pagan Roman calendar, it is tonight, Friday night, the 20th day of June, 2025. And it's a very special Sabbath for some of you that are viewing here with me. If you're following a suggestion that I made, that I'm doing, and that is fasting on this Sabbath for a purpose because of the church being scattered, and are hoping to come to a better understanding on that and a realization of what we should be doing at this time that we're scattered. And to help us with that, now I played a sermon last Sabbath by God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong when he called a church-wide fast. And when he called it, when we were one body under one apostle, one leader who was an apostle, I kind of paused when I said was, because even though he's still in the grave, when he comes up, he's going to continue to have been and be the classified, categorized, labeled as the end time apostle, of which there was only one, at least so far, and God hasn't shown that he's going to be calling another. Now, maybe since the two end-time witnesses are the two olive branches who are the two candlesticks, and there's 7 candlesticks, and there are 7 church eras, and there's a messenger, an angel, a messenger for each. The word rendered there can be either angel or messenger for the messenger to the 7 church eras. And being that those messengers are candlesticks, there are 7 candlesticks, 7 church eras, and we bring that right down to the end time. And there are 2 witnesses. Those 2 witnesses, again, they're 2 olive branches. They are 2 candlesticks. And since there's a candlestick for each church era, are not those 2 end time candlesticks, one for the Philadelphia era, one for the Laodicean era? Now, there are some out there, and another reason for this fast, which you can voluntarily join. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that we'd be doing it this Sabbath. Reminded everybody last Sabbath, ran an ad all week this week on Facebook saying that, we'd be fasting this Sabbath using the Roman date of June 21st. Unfortunately, we have to refer to 2 dates on the Roman calendar because between sunset and midnight on Friday is technically the 20th. But most people understand if we're doing a Sabbath that's the 21st day of June, and the Sabbath begins at sunset the evening before. Most of you know without somebody saying it to you that the evening before and before midnight is one date earlier on the Roman calendar. And so it becomes 21st at midnight tonight. But anyway, those who, I put out the word that I'd be doing it, and I left it, I stated it as church-wide, but I only have, what influence do I have church-wide? Only that of the few people who tune in here voluntarily, and that's the limitation of my authority. I don't have the kind of, no one does, really. Some claim they do. They've set up organizations of men as if they have authority over the church, and they set their organization up as if that was the church that followed the Church of God as we knew it under God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong, who told us that we were not members of the corporate organization that he set up to hold the assets of the work, the buildings, the land, etc., and to pay taxes on workers and all that under a corporate name and have it very well organized, and for him not to be convoluted with his personal income taxes, but have a corporate. purpose for that. But he pointed out, look, when he set up the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws for what was first the Radio Church of God, for many years, few decades, wasn't until roughly 1967, 1968, somewhere in there, that he changed the name from Radio Church of God to Worldwide Church of God. Same corporation, just a change of name for that same corporation, which he told us twice. He told us in 1956 at a Feast of Tabernacles in Big Sandy, brethren, how many of you are saying you're members of the Radio Church of God? And then because of the way people were talking about what Mr. Armstrong was doing, big growing movement on the radio, he said, well, alternately, how many of you are saying you are part of or members of the Armstrong movement? Because that's what a lot of people were calling the results of the work under Mr. Armstrong that Christ was leading him in doing. And so he said, and so some people raised their hands on both calls. And he said, okay, I don't want you to be, you shouldn't be doing that. You weren't baptized into a denomination of men, into any organization of men, but into the body of Christ, also known as the Church of God. Plain and simple, without a modifier, without an adjective. And so and I have a recording of that. I'm going to play that sometime for you soon. Tom Williams, I need you to help me get that clip again. And I'll play it. It exists. And Mr. Armstrong, did he not do, brethren, the same thing? Some of you were there. I mean, it's a 1,200-seat auditorium, 1,250. The main floor was nearly full. Just a few oddball seats empty here and there, and some people up in the balcony. So somewhere close to 1,000 people were in attendance that Sabbath in the mid-1980s, when he did the same thing he did in 1956, only he did it stronger in the mid-80s. Oh, much stronger. And I was there present in person to witness that. And he asked everybody who are members of the worldwide, because this is 1980 now, the name change had been in effect for over a decade, since the late 1960s, 67, 68, 69, not later than 69. And the name was changed to Worldwide. So he asked everybody present that Sabbath in the mid-80s, how many of you, brethren, are members of the Worldwide Church of God? Well, a number of people raised up their hands. I see my volume may just be a little bit hot, so I'm gonna back it down just a little bit. Now, if your volume goes down, you might want to reach over and turn your volume control up, since I just turned it down on our end over here. But back to what I was saying, Mr. Armstrong asked everybody to put their hands up. Well, hey, a pretty good number of people put their hands up, but nobody had them up really high and waving their hand or all the way high. Most people who had their hands up just had them up not to go above their head. You know, you still have your elbow quite bent. And so Mr. Armstrong decided to play this. Some of us could see it. We knew Mr. Armstrong pretty well, and we knew, even if we hadn't heard or been around and heard what he did in 1956 at the Feast of Tabernacles in Big Sandy, Texas, you know, we just knew. You know, we knew there was a corporation, and like, okay, what's the big deal about being a member of this corporation? But so half the people did not put up their hands. You know, they might have been the older ones. But as I said, Mr. Armstrong played it. Most those who did have their hands up only had their hands up more or less halfway up. So Mr. Armstrong said, "Oh, come on now. If you're members of the Worldwide Church of God, get your hands up high." Well, those who had their hands up just halfway, brethren, boy, they shoved their hands up high. Most of them did. And, I mean, you could practically say that, oh, shoved them up high. Okay, Mr. Armstrong, you shoved them up high. And a few people who didn't have their hands up at all, when Mr. Armstrong said that, the look on their face was kind of like, hey, I don't want to be left out. Uh, are we about to head to Petra, or whatever? Who knows what their thinking was? But some who did not have their hands up then shoved their hands, no halfway in between, nothing. Boom! They, like Mr. Armstrong said, get them up high. Now, if you're members of the Worldwide Church of God, and so, boy, people shoved their hands up high. A few people even waving their hands like, here I am, Mr. Armstrong. I'm a member of the Worldwide Church of God. Well, Mr. Armstrong, keep him up now. Keep him up. And he's looking around. He's looking, and you can see him intently looking. This is not something mild he did in the corner. He did this very out in the open. And so he's looking around intently. And then, whoo, boy, here comes the boulder. Here comes the big drop. He says, okay, everybody who has your hands up, put your hands down. None. None, emphasized as only Mr. Armstrong and that voice he has can do. None of you, brethren, who have your hands up, are members of the Worldwide Church of God. I guess maybe some people might have been thinking who didn't have their hands up, oh, well, hey, those people, he looked around, they aren't. Maybe I am. No, I don't know. I just threw that in for craziness. But then Mr. Armstrong explained, and this makes good logical sense, and he explained it logically, carefully, matter-of-factly, but also for those who have God's Spirit, with spiritual understanding in it. He said, brethren, if you've been baptized into the body of Jesus Christ, you've had hands laid on you, you've received God's Holy Spirit, he said, you are members of the Church of God. No modifier, no adjective. You are members of just plain the Church of God. And he explained further, that it's a spiritual organism, not an organization of men. He said, you were baptized into the body of Christ, the Church of God, a spiritual organism, and then emphasized you were not baptized into an organization of men, not into any denomination, which is, those are organizations of men. Denominations are. And so he said, now what if people ask you, what church are you in? What do you say to them? He said, just tell them you're members of the Church of God. And not with the modifier. And he said, okay, now some of people may think, oh, you're members of that corporation out of Tennessee or at one time Indiana and that Church of God. And he said, well, then you can explain to them, listen to what they're saying and explain to them. No, we're not members of that corporation. He said, you can say that the corporation of the church is the Worldwide Church of God. But he said, don't be telling people you're members of the Worldwide Church of God. And what he was explaining, was he not? Do you get it, brethren? He was explaining that the Church of God, which is composed like Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12 says, and while I'm talking about that, we're going to hear from Mr. Armstrong a little bit tonight during this evening of fasting. I'm beginning this Sabbath fast at sunset. If you're voluntarily following me in this, then may God bless you, and may your understanding be greatly increased. And whether you fast or not, I'll appreciate you pray for me as I, in spite of the fast or while we're doing the fast, I live stream for an hour and a half tonight, Friday night, and then early in the morning I'll be up for a 2-hour live stream during a time when I'm fasting till sunset at the end of the Sabbath. But let me put the Bible display up. I've had the date on the screen a long time. You can clearly see the Hebrew calendar. We're the 25th of the third month. the significance of the date itself for the third month. We got a fourth month with rest of this month and all of the fourth month with no annual holy days in it, no feast days, no annual holy days. And then we have the month following that. Let's take a look at this Roman calendar. The green up there where we had 7 weeks that we counted till the end of the seventh week and numbered the next day as 50 and observed Pentecost on it. That's behind us. We're in the month of June, and toward the end of the month of June, we're this being the 20th day of June, third Sabbath of the month. One more Sabbath in June. No holy days. We look over in July, and we see the same thing. In July, no holy days, no annual holy days. We got a weekly holy day. We're to remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, so it is a holy day, although not an annual holy day. So there's a distinction you might want to be careful to make. There's no annual holy days or feast days in the month of August. But now, after June and then a full month of July and a full month of August, we get to September, and you can see toward the end of September, there's a purple highlight on the date that is a Tuesday, September 23rd, begins the previous evening, Monday night, September 22nd. That's the first of the 4 fall holy days, fall annual holy days. That one, the first one, as most of you would know, will be the Feast of Trumpets. Now, for those of you who are new and who I've invited and encouraged because of your interest either in the church or me personally, and like, hey, what is your religion, Stephen? A number of people have asked me that recently. And more than one who works at Dollar Tree has said, hey, I want to tune in and hear your live stream. So if you're one of those who worked at Dollar Tree, there's another person there, a married lady with some kids. She was very interested when we got into a discussion at the register with other people, and I chimed in, and she said, hey, you know pretty good about all this. I told her what I do, and she said, well, I want to tune in and hear that. So if you're here tonight, greetings to you, my other friend too. And I realize some of the things we're covering, for those of you who are new, it may be like, oh, it's flying right over my head. What are you talking about? So I am trying to be careful and step by step, going methodically and slow, so you can understand what I'm saying, or at least get the gist of it enough to kind of say, I get the gist of it. I see where you are, where you're going. I'll figure out the rest of it later. We cover a lot of things over and over, so that repetition is a good form of emphasis, a good way to help you remember. In fact, that's one reason why God has weekly Sabbath services, brethren, and new friends as well, is because as humans, we tend to forget things. We can be in a class and learning a subject, and hour later not remember half of what was said unless we took careful notes and then go back and review it a few times. So weekly Sabbaths refresh things in our mind, and they put them in the short-term memory instead of being way back in the depths of the long-term memory that takes much longer to, hey, what was that? I can't think of the name of that. It was because you hadn't used that name recently. But you use it recently and often, and it's there in your short term for easy tapping into and thinking with. And you meditate and think. You pull it into the short term as you do the meditation. That is one reason why, as King David was illustrative of prayer and meditation, why meditation is so important. It brings things way back from the recesses of your mind into the forefront, into the short term, the present, active memory. You could call it your human RAM, like the computer RAM. That's only alive or active when the computer's turned on. It's not long-term stored memory. It's active, alive memory. That's what the RAM is. And your mind is built like that. Short-term memory is like the RAM in a computer. If you understand that, it's helpful to you. You don't feel so bad when you don't remember a name right away. You say, okay, it's back there in the short term. Just, tell your mind you need that, and it'll start working the paths to try to access it, and then pull it forward to the short term. And all of a sudden you say, oh, yeah, hey, I remember. So anyway, maybe that helps. But our next holy day, first fall holy day, not until September 23rd. That's Feast of Trumpets. And I wanted to point out for the new people, these holy days, feast days that come from Leviticus chapter 23, where God lists them all right there. You might say, well, he did that for Judah. Those are old Jewish holy days. No, that wasn't just Judah. That was for all of ancient Israel, all 12 tribes. And when you really understand that, you may come to understand that one of those tribes, the tribe of Joseph, and it's Joseph's two twin sons, the half-tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh today, are the United Kingdom and the United States, respectively. And so we're Israel right here. And that's one reason we have, and should have, that affinity for our brother Judah and the modern nation state of Israel in the Middle East, which is a subject in and of and to itself, which we may want to cover some of tonight with all the news going on related to that. And just to mention for the record that Israel is presently in its sixth or seventh day now of active war with Iran directly. And as most of you who've seen any news at all have seen, Israel has bombed many of the nuclear facilities and various infrastructures of Iran and killed some of its top leaders and left alive the Ayatollah Khamenei. And President Trump still trying somewhat to negotiate a deal with him, which I've got video of a broadcast I'm going to play someday from our news program that I caught coming out of Lebanon in their Arabic language of that area, where they were laughing right after the deal was made, 10 years ago, somewhere around there, that original deal with Iran that the United States and some other European countries corroborated in making with Iran, unfreezing them in exchange for them agreeing to only let their uranium go to a certain level. And then immediately, within a few days after that deal was signed between Iran and the countries of Europe and the United States, within just a few days, a former advisor to a president of Iran got on national television in Lebanon, speaking again in the Arabic language. But I got a recording of that, and we translated the Arabic to English and put English subtitles at the bottom of it. And what the guy was saying, they were laughing. They had a girl there with them laughing with that former advisor to the president, saying, we really pulled a good one over them. We are still from the river to the sea. And we already have uranium developed to a somewhat greater level than we agreed it could go to, max. They said, but that's underground and that's a secret, and we've already got it beyond the level we agreed it would go to. Well, I sent that tape off to the White House. I said, hey, do you realize what they're saying, what they've done? But did anybody respond with any positiveness to that? No, they chose to ignore it. And, and I wasn't the only source of that. So, I mean, they could have seen it, and their intelligence probably, if it didn't, they should have seen it. I sent it to make sure they couldn't say oh, we didn't know about that. Well, what did you do with, the copy I sent you? But For whatever reason it was, they ignored these people who would know and who were close to the top in Iran. A former advisor to the president would be pretty top in Iran. He was the one saying, we already got the uranium at a higher level than we agreed it could go to, and we're not about to get rid of that or tell them where it is. And that was out there. Somebody who was party to that agreement, should they not have come back and had said, hey, wait a second, we heard you on that broadcast. Where is that stuff? It's got to go. This agreement says it's got to go, or we're putting the sanctions right back on you, Bubba. But no, they let all that slide, and now we're into trouble that we see today. And I think many of you are hoping, as I am, that stuff underground, way deep underground at Ferdo, will be eliminated. Can you trust them to, oh yeah, we'll give you that. We spent all that money and all that time digging that all the way down there and developing it. No, they're still working on developing it further right now to see, can we get a bomb off before we have to cave into all this? Can we just blast Israel right off the map and the U.S. too, and then go after the rest of you around the world? I mean, that's what they would like to do. And what if they vote in or bring in a former heir of the what do you call the top leader the way they used to call him in Iran? I was just watching that video yesterday. Now it's somehow already slipped into my long-term memory. I'm having a problem bringing that out into the short term. Shah, like the Shah of Iran. They call him Shah. See there, you wait on your long term, it'll sneak it back up to your short term. So they called. They were talking to the son of the former Shah of Iran, and hey, what if we bring you in there, make you the Shah, and all that. When you listen carefully to what he's saying, you say, wait a minute. If you get him in there, if you haven't blown up all that highly developed stuff that could be made into a nuke before he gets in there, listen to what he's saying. Listen to his his undergird of hatred against the Western elements, and same old, and consider the religion, even though there are some who say, oh, they are just moderate Islams. Well, they're not true to their religion. Their religion is in the book, the Quran. The Quran advocates things and deceiving your enemy, make him think you're his friend, so he relaxes his guard, so you can very easily stab him in the back. I mean, that's the elements of the religion itself. So if they aren't even a good adherent to their religion, if they're considered good and moderate, they're not true to their religion. So it's a craziness when you analyze all the logic of it. But let's go back to where we were. No holy days until September 23rd, Feast of Trumpets. And for those of you who might be new, what does that particular Feast of Trumpets, what does it picture in God's plan of salvation? All the fall holy days relate to the fall harvest, to the people who will come into God's kingdom after Christ returns, and the bulk, the great majority, will come in at the end of the 1,000 years of Christ's rule on this earth, and what's called the millennium. It's the seventh millennium, technically. And after that 1,000 years, there's going to be a great white throne judgment, and the billions who never knew Christ, who were born and never knew Christ and never called by God, will come up in a resurrection, appear before Christ's throne, and he'll tell them, you're all guilty of the death penalty. But guess what, folks? I came and paid it. Some of you even helped crucify me as I paid that death penalty for you. And you're going to have a period of time. We used to call it 100-year period. It's some portion, at least, of a 100-year period. Mr. Armstrong said there's two ways you can understand Isaiah 65 where this is mentioned. So he backed off of calling it a concrete 100-year period. But people who live in it, they'll be able to live. I think it says like a max of 100 years or something like that. We'll discuss that another time. But there's going to be a period when everybody comes up, has plenty of time to prove to God that they're going to obey. And although obedience does not earn you the eternal life that's given to you as a gift, it prevents you from being disqualified from receiving that gift. Because if you disobey, you don't get the gift. Plain, straight, sweet, and simple. And if you don't get the gift, which is life, what's the opposite of that? What are you getting? Oh, you're getting death. Now, you're not burning forever in hellfire, I'll just tell you that. But death is still a form of punishment, and it's an eternal punishment, because those who get to life get eternal life. They live forever, never die. And if you got death, you don't get to participate in that eternal life. So you lose an eternal gift, a gift of eternity. So it's a big loss if you disobey God and lose out. But the Feast of Trumpets pictures blowing the trumpet and Christ returning to the earth on that day. And then 10 days later, you see a purple highlight behind the date of October 2nd. That's the day on the Hebrew calendar. That's the day that is the 10th day of the 7th month that God describes to be the day of atonement, a day that in the plan of salvation pictures Christ putting away Satan the devil. He'll put him into a bottomless pit, and he'll be restrained there for the 1,000 years of the millennium. And then he gets released for a little season. During the time, those people that come up in the great white throne judgment period, that let's just call it 100-year period, Satan gets loosed for a little season. People get to see, oh man, when that varmint is released, people have bad attitudes, world war breaks out, and people hate and kill one another. But with him gone, why, look at what we had for that 1,000 years when Christ was reigning and ruling. The world was beautiful. Christ's not going to let that get out of hand. He's just going to let people see the difference. Those who come up and see Christ reigning and ruling, and see again what the devil does when he has opportunity. And with all those people, boy, he'll be after 1,000 years of being locked up, he's going to be a real wild maniac. So, I mean, that's going to be like a movie. If you love horror movies, you're going to get to see one right after the millennium for a little short while. But then Christ's going to take him again. But this time, he's going to lock him away permanently. He's going to throw away the key, and the devil will be in a black hole. You see in the universe, black holes? That's reserved for the devil and his demons. They, unfortunately for them, are eternal beings. They made a bad, wrong, evil decision, and it cast their character in concrete, as if it were, in spiritual eternity. They are cast as they are, and they can't and won't change, and they just have to be locked away. When you think about it, and it must be sad to our Creator God, who made them such beautiful creatures, like better than any animal world in the physical world we could ever look at. They had beauty unimaginable. And they should have been happy beings and obedient beings. But nope, they yielded to the vanity of Satan the devil. And that's another thing about vanity. As Mr. Armstrong pointed out, that's the first sin. The very first sin is the one that Lucifer, who turned Satan the devil, created when he chose to do battle with his creator, like a Frankenstein monster. But let's go on. I want to come back to the subject we were on. I'll just mention the rest of the fall holy days. The next fall holy day in October will be October 7. You see the purple under the 7 for October? I wish I could zoom in on this. I don't have a button set to zoom in on it, but I'll just tell you quickly. And that's the third feast day, the third holy day of the fall season. That would be there's 7 holy days and feast days in all. So that would be number 6, and that is the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. It's a 7-day feast. Only the first day of that feast is an annual holy day where you don't work. You assemble together in a holy convocation, and you bring an offering before the Eternal. And then the last feast day and last holy day of the year of that fall season, you see the purple highlighting on October 14. That's what God refers to as the 8th day of a 7-day feast. So it's not part of the feast, although it adjoins the feast. I mean, the feast itself is 7 days, but then this 8th day, the day right after the Feast of Tabernacles, is a separate feast called the Last Great Day. And that pictures that great white throne judgment that I was just mentioning, that all who ever lived, who never knew Christ, were never called to God's harvest, because God only had a small spring harvest, but he had a predestinated small number. That's all that predestination means. God had a small number of people in mind to call for the spring harvest. And then everybody else is, in effect, they're predestinated too. There's a duality in that predestination even. There's a big predestination for the fall harvest, billions. And by comparison, the spring harvest is like 1 or 2 out of every million people who ever lived. If you group off all who ever lived into groups of 1 million each, God would be just picking 1 or 2 out of each one of those 1 million groups to be called to his spring harvest. And it works out that infinitesimally small. It's less than 1%. It's even less than 0.01%. Who are called to the spring harvest. So if you are called to the spring harvest, or if you are being called, or you recognize the fact that, hey, I am understanding what Stephen is talking about, I may have an opportunity toward this calling. Well, then you can bet your boots, if you were a Texaner, if you were in Texas. Some people in Alabama wear boots, wherever you are. You can bet your boots or bet something very meaningful to you, that if God is calling you, he is calling to you to something extremely special that you want to pay attention to and follow through on him and dig roots and say, yes, Lord God Almighty, I want this. Oh, eternal great God. But let's go back to where we were. I kind of took us off on a path of the holy days. Picture God's plan of salvation. Hope you can see it. It really falls into 2 categories, a certain duality within the 7 holy days. There's a spring harvest, there's a fall harvest. And the few are called to the fall harvest. And they got called during those 7 weeks that God planted and watered them and cultivated them. And then on the day of Pentecost, that pictures the New Testament church, the small spring harvest. Now, let me pull the Bible display up for a moment. Now, in summarizing this fast, brethren, that I have called, and friends, and if you're new, you're welcome. When we fast, we don't eat food, and surprising to some to hear, and you don't drink water either. That's right. Our fast is like what Moses did when he went up to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water. And as the fast that Jesus Christ did for 40 days and 40 nights, he neither ate bread nor drank water. Now, toward the end of that 40 days, the devil came along and tried to get him to break the fast early, tried to get Christ in the greatest point of his hunger to turn a rock into bread. and eat, obey me, the devil. But Christ said, no, you get behind me, Satan, which is what, brethren, is it not what we should say? And good job, a salute to Jacob Holst, Holst, which is the first 5 letters of the word holster, like his dad used to say, hey, my name is Dane Holst, like holster without the ER. Holst, no ER on the end. That helped people remember his last name. Oh, your name is Holst. Yeah, like a holster, but no ER on the end. Well, brother, I'm going to ask you, as those who fast with me and pray, or if you're just praying, that you, in your prayers, pray for Jacob Holst, the son of Dane Holst, because earlier this week, Tuesday night, just after midnight, June 17, his dad succumbed and gave up his last breath, and he joined the ranks of Rip Van Winkle. I don't know if that's the way you say this, but he's now sleeping until the resurrection. Christ put it that way. Hey, the guy that was dead, Christ said he's just sleeping. Everybody laughed like that was a big joke. But as Christ said it, now he intended to resurrect that guy right away. So he put it like, hey, watch, he's going to get up out of his sleep. He's just sleeping. And death, in that sense, when you sleep, when you're really in a sleep, you're unconscious. You don't know what's going on around you. Hopefully you're in a safe place while you sleep, maybe snore away. But even if you don't snore, if you're just in a deep sleep, you don't know what's going on around you. Well, that's when Christ said the guy that was dead was just sleeping. Is that not what Christ meant? Hey, when you're dead, you're just unconscious, awaiting one resurrection or another. There are 3 resurrections in all. The 2 main ones, the ones we want to focus on, the first for the spring harvest, and the second resurrection for the fall harvest. The bigger that fall harvest, that resurrection, a much bigger, greater, colossal in size resurrection for the majority of men who were, since Adam and Eve, cut off from God. Since Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, God drove them out of the garden and put 2 angels with flaming swords there to guard the way, to prevent them from getting back in there, did he not, brethren? And friends, most of you, even if you're not part of our church, you know the story of the Garden of Eden. Hopefully you do. Hopefully we haven't gotten so far away from the Bible and people having Bibles and reading their Bibles and knowing the Bible stories that are put in books for little kids and told in a graphic and in a illustrative way and cartoon-like and colorful way. By the way, we have a 6-volume Bible not correspondence. We have a correspondence course, yes, Bible correspondence course, but we have a 6-volume Bible story book where its author made a minister under the ordination under the hands of Herbert Armstrong into the ministry of Jesus Christ. And Christ gave that man a wonderful talent of writing Bible story books for kids from age 5 to 105. So if any of you say, well, I don't want to read some little kiddie Bible story book, well, consider what the intended audience is. The intended audience is for kids from age 5 to 105. So just consider yourself a big kid as you read it. And they're superbly written, like you're watching one of the most fascinating movies you could ever hope to see. And a guy that works in the movie industry and has done some movie star type roles on a small scale, hoping for a bigger scale, but enjoying the whole arena. Mr. Allen has encouraged me to try to use some of the AI video stuff and put some of those Bible story books in a video form. Since I pay a monthly subscription to some of those services, you bet, Alan, I think that was a great, outstanding suggestion. You're going to see this kid, somewhere between age 5 and 105, use some of those AI video graphic creation things on the Bible story book. We'll see what it comes up with. I've done that with in a couple of different ways. I've shared some of those with you. I even have one that relates to the duality in prophecy of the escape that we should all be wanting to have and be watching and praying so that we can be accounted worthy to have it. As ancient Israel had an escape that God gave them and cleared the way when they got locked in at the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army pursuing them. There's a duality of that old ancient history escape with God rescuing them out of sin, out of Egypt that pictures sin, and then escorting them toward the promised land, stopping off at Mount Sinai on the way, and on the day of Pentecost receiving the law, which if they had obeyed, God would have been their God, and they would have been his people and been blessed and never had to march through the desert for 40 years or have gone into captivity the way God put them into captivity later. Took them away from the nice promised land for a while. Oh, so important to obey, because even though obedience may not earn you a whole lot, you are rewarded according to your works and receive the number of cities you reign and rule over with Christ according to your works, and how much you took of what Christ gave you and how much you developed it, you get rewarded according to that. But eternal life itself being a gift, there's no amount of works you could do to earn that. I mean, it goes on much longer than your lifetime of doing works to earn it. How can you earn eternity that's way beyond your lifetime? You can't. God gives it to you as a gift by your simply not disobeying. Well, did I say that right? You not disobey. You don't want to disobey, so that's not disobeying God. Or in other words, take the two negatives out of it, and by obeying God, you can be accounted worthy of standing before the Son of Man in a resurrection to eternal life that he gives, as long as you don't disqualify for it. And hopefully you do some things, for that thing about rewarded according to your works really only applies to the first resurrection for those who become kings and priests with Christ and are given cities to rule over. Because the rest, the second resurrection, the fall harvest people, they come in as children of God. Now, that can be a great blessing. Kids can be a great blessing. Parents have a lot of fun with their kids, and they love to spoil the kids, and a certain amount of spoiling of the kids is not bad, not wrong, as long as you are disciplining them the moment they do a wrong or show any vanity or lust, which kids will. Foolishness is bound up in the hearts of kids, so they're going to do that. You have to spank it out of them. Oh boy, we're preaching things that goes contrary to the way men have developed their teachings as they've had the freedom given to them after Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden to go their own way and develop their own laws and their own system of education. And they're going to find out man without God makes all kind of blunders, getting us into world wars and all kind of fun things. But this picture you see on your screen has a duality of not only God rescuing ancient Israel out of Egypt as they got entrapped before Pharaoh's army, and God said, oh, okay, here's a pathway, a narrow passageway where you can escape. And once God removed the pillar of fire holding back Pharaoh's army, and dumb Pharaoh says, hey, they can go through there, so can we, forgetting that God opened that up for them and was protecting them in the process, had that fire holding them back. They didn't think it through at all. They acted on emotion. Pharaoh, on emotion, said, go get them. And the nuts that obeyed him got in the midst of that sea, and God said, that's it, folks. And he let the waters come in, and he destroyed that army. Now, God's going to do it a little differently, as we know from Revelation chapter 12, verses 14, 15, and 16. After those in verse 14 are given two wings of a great eagle, those who are accounted worthy to escape, who are doing what Christ requires as prerequisites in Luke 21, verse 36, to be watching and praying, and thereby being accounted worthy to escape. They get 2 wings of a great eagle. I'm just going to pop Luke 21 on the screen for you for just a moment while I'm mentioning that. And oops, I went to Luke 21:14. I want to go to verse 36. Okay, so we'll just change this to verse 36. Here it is. And please come up on the screen. Boom. Here. Okay. Watch. That's one of 2 things we have to do. And pray always. Now, why is the word therefore there? If you just back up one verse, we see that as Christ was describing the seals of Revelation, as he described seal number 5, which is the Great Tribulation, he said it's that 5th seal, Great Tribulation, is going to come unexpectedly on the whole world. And the reference that Luke used to say that was that unexpectedness. The Great Tribulation comes as a snare. That's like an animal trap, where a little mouse gets caught in a mouse trap, a bear gets caught in a big bear trap. They didn't know that trap was there, or they would have scooted around it, or they didn't know it was a trap. I mean, the mouse sees the cheese. There's the trap. He can see the trap. He doesn't realize what the trap is. He just sees the cheese. He goes for the cheese. Boom, the snap pops shut on him, snaps shut on him. Well, even though people, maybe they can see what they should recognize coming as great tribulation upon the whole world, they don't. And so when it does come, it comes as if it comes overnight like a thief in the night. Boom, all of a sudden a thief is in your house in the dark. You didn't know he was coming, or you would have prepared, stayed up with your shotgun ready, waiting for him. Lights on, everything. No, you're in your bed sleeping. He's in there quietly going through all your stuff. And if you wake up, he's got maybe a knife, maybe a gun. You got a problem on your hands. But Christ says the Great Tribulation is like that, like a snare, like an animal getting caught in a trap. It's going to be there, and it's going to snap shut overnight, catching people off guard. And that's why in the next verse, Christ says, therefore, because that 5th seal, Great Tribulation, comes unexpectedly on the whole world. Let's go back to that for a moment. Look at what Christ says through Luke at the bottom of this, at the end of this verse. For as a snare shall it come on not a few people here, not a few people there. Brethren, friends, what does this say? Who is this great tribulation coming on unexpectedly? Other than, as it says here, shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Oh, well, excuse me. Wow. Is that saying the whole world? God is emphasizing that through Luke. He's emphasizing that in a most eloquent way, is he not? God's own words. It comes on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. I was trying to emphasize that. I probably sound like a dog howling, but brother, do you get it? He's saying this thing that comes as the 5th seal, Great Tribulation, comes as a shocking surprise on the whole earth, the whole world. Tout le monde, tout le terre. Therefore, he says, do this watching and praying, and he holds out a carrot, a big promise, surprise, so that you can be accounted worthy to what? 2 things. 1, in time order, first of all, to escape all these things that shall come to pass with the commencement of the 5th seal, Great Tribulation. And then 3.5 years later, toward the end of the Great Tribulation, on the 7th trumpet, when Christ returns, at the beginning of that trump, and that trump signals the 3rd woe, which consists of the 7 vials of the 7 last plagues that Christ himself, with the angel, will direct the pouring out of after he returns to the earth. He returns to the earth first. And when he returns, what happens to his saints? Well, those who are in the earth, dead in the earth, sleeping in the earth, they rise first, as 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4 tells us. If you want to look that up, 1 Corinthians 15, verses 50 through 53, 4, 5, maybe starting at verse 51. 1 Thessalonians 4, starting at verse 15 and verse 16, we see that after those who rise first, who are dead in Christ, they're in the grave, but in Christ, they come up first. Then we which remain alive, who maybe were the ones who are those in the first part of this promise, that you may be accounted worthy to escape, who were accounted worthy to escape, who were in a place of refuge, a place of protection, a place of nourishment, being nourished and fed by God, both physically and spiritually for those 3.5 years. And those who are there for that when Christ returns, they're still alive in the flesh. Many of them, 144,000 of them, have been sealed in their foreheads after the first 2.5 years of that great tribulation. If you wonder, hey, when and what is this deal about the 144,000? Well, it's a certain preeminent blessing given to certain of those who are at the place of safety, because it happens in between the fifth seal and the seventh seal. It's called the sixth seal. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The sixth seal is the signs in the heaven that tell you the seventh seal is about to open. And that seventh seal is 1 year long. So 1 year from the 3.5 years means we're 2.5 years into the Great Tribulation. And then it says right after that, in between the sixth seal and the seventh seal, that's the way I should have said it, there will be the sealing of the 144,000. And I have a graphic on that I sometimes display on the screen that lets you see these seals charted out on a spreadsheet. Here, I have it for you. So that fifth seal, after the first four, that the white, red, black, and pale green horse, that's your first four seals. Your fifth seal, that long orange seal, is your great tribulation. It lasts all the way up to Christ's return. But at the same time, it runs throughout the 1 year long day of the Lord's seventh seal also, where God pitches in and pours out his wrath during that last year. And the seventh seal, which that seventh seal itself consists of 7 trumpets. And the first four being the first 4 winds, the last 3 being the 3 woes, that third woe on the seventh trump being when Christ returns and has the seventh angel pour out those 7 vials of the 7 last plagues. You can't escape all that. That's the biggest thing I think you should really get out of what I'm saying, brethren and friends, especially if you're friends who are brand new to, wow, this crazy religion this guy on the internet live stream is talking about. Stephen Gilbert, what's he saying? Well, you do this, you really do it, you can be in the category of people God would say you can be accounted worthy to escape. And if you really do this, and if God hadn't called you to the spring harvest, you might put yourself in a position where God takes notice of you. You're praying to him every day. You're watching. You're really talking to God about, hey, help these people who were adversely affected by those first 4 seals that we are to watch. And you watch them every day and you pray, and God, you're getting God's attention because you're really crying out to him and saying, hey, God, look at this. Help them people. That's the kind of heart he wants to see, that he's going to bless with being accounted worthy of 2 wonderful promises. The first one is accounted worthy to escape the great tribulation. And that is something, brethren, to desire and want. So what if somebody says, well, that's selfish? Well, what does God say about loving others? Does he not say love others as much as you love yourself? Therefore, are you supposed to not love yourself? Well, if you don't love yourself, then if you're loving others as much as somebody you don't love, you don't have much love for anybody else either then, so love them as much as you love you. So love yourself, but love others equally as much. So there's a balance to it. God says, love yourself, but balance it by loving everybody else equally as much as you love yourself, so that way you're not a narcissist, a popular term today that people consider, if somebody's a little bit selfish, they must be a narcissist, people like to say. People become experts in the psychology of their fellow humans. When, brethren, should we not be looking at people with mercy, like what we're supposed to do as we watch and pray? Pray for those people who are adversely affected by the first four seals of war. And, well, first of all, the first seal being false religion, antichrist, false religion, big false religious system that's gobbled up the whole world. Revelation 12, verse 9, the devil who deceiveth not just a few people here or there, but Revelation 12:9, read it in your own Bible, who deceiveth the whole world. Same thing as people that are caught off guard by the fifth seal, Great Tribulation. That's all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. That's the whole world. Caught off guard by the fifth seal, the whole world. Revelation 12:9, deceived by this first seal, false religion. Second seal, war, rumors of war. Third seal, black horse, famine. Fourth seal, pale horse of death. Death by four means: disease, epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. That's the Loimos, Loimos, that Christ talked about. He also mentioned seismus as part of that fourth seal. That's death by commotions on the ground, commotions in the air, gale force winds of all kinds, typhoons, tornadoes, hurricanes, etc., and commotions on the ground, such as what's mentioned in the King James Version of the Bible for this word seismus, earthquakes. But there's much more than that. There's volcanic eruptions, there's tsunamis, tidal waves, floods, wildfires, any form of seismic activity on the earth. That's your seismus, part of that fourth seal, pale horse of death, with a rider on that horse named Death, alongside whom the grave, a tombstone, rides. And two other forms of death Christ mentioned: death by mobs and seditions in Mark 13, verse 8, the Greek word tarike, meaning death in that way and general trouble. And Christ also mentioned death by wild animals. That's also part of that fourth seal that we're to watch, pray about. People affected by that. Somebody get ate by a lion, came in their backyard. They didn't, they're coming into people's neighborhoods today. Alligators in Florida. Watch out. Be careful. Beware. Don't be stupid. You see one, keep your distance, great distance. And that's going to wax worse and worse. And we are to watch those if we want to be accounted worthy to escape the fifth seal when it comes, which is going to start with the total demolition, destruction of the areas of Ephraim and Manasseh today. I'll explain that in the morning. So if that went flying right over your head, where's the areas of Ephraim and Manasseh, Stephen? Well, catch us. You're invited and encouraged to join us for the Sabbath service in the morning. I'll pick up with that in the morning and cover that. But you can be accounted worthy to escape the Great Tribulation. The second promise, 3.5 years later, which also is based on these same two prerequisites. If you want to stand before the Son of Man in the first resurrection, you have got to have been doing the watching and the praying. Don't think, oh, well, I'll just not do that and hope I get accounted worthy to escape. Hope that I get to come up in God's first resurrection because I'm keeping his commandments. Well, guess what? All of the people mentioned in Revelation 12, verse 17, it says they were keeping God's commandments, but they get called and spotted out as a remnant, a remainder, those left behind after those who are accounted worthy to escape get through this narrow passageway at Petra, where God already made the narrow passageway for that. He's already got it prepared. He already tells us what he's going to do there when the army of the devil chases those accounted worthy to escape. Now, why would I be saying this? Just because we heard Mr. Armstrong say it, brethren? No, because as Mr. Armstrong knew when he was in his younger years and very alert to this, and as Dr. Herman Hay, Herman Hay, explained to me after I asked him, what's this with the Petra thing, Mr. Hay? He said, well, Stephen, we called him Dr. Hay back then before Mr. Armstrong. He agreed after he himself, Herman Hay, asked Mr. Armstrong, should I be calling myself a doctor? As you explained this vanity stuff of men and all that. And he said, I think I shouldn't. And Mr. Armstrong said, I think I agree with you, Herman. So there you are. So, I mean, there we are. Why are we still calling him Dr. Hay? Well, we got in that old habit. Um, but as he explained to me, he said, look, if you look in Daniel chapter 11, verse 41, and believe you me, I went right home, looked that right smack straight up after Mr. Hay explained that to me. And sure enough, it says exactly what he says there, that there's only one place recorded in the Bible as being protected from the beast during the Great Tribulation. And if you read it, you'll see it's described as the land of Edom and Moab, and the greater part, the chief part of the land of the children of Ammon. Not all of Ammon, but the better part of it, the majority of Ammon, but all of Moab and all of Edom, and they're all contiguous. They all run right into one another. Moab's in the middle. To the north of Moab, adjacent to it, right on its border, is Ammon. And to the south of Moab, and again, Moab in the middle, to the south of Moab is Edom. And at the southernmost tip of Edom, get yourself a little bit past the Red Sea here, and where the rock walls of Petra are, they are part of Edom. So those women out there who've been preaching like they're some kind of fantastic evangelist, they've been preaching, hey, Petra's not mentioned anywhere in the Bible, as if Mr. Armstrong were some kind of sidewinder, snake oil selling kook. That's the way some people present him, unfortunately, for them, because God said, remember by and through whom you learned the truth. And God gave it to us, brethren. Most of you know this. Through his end-time apostle, through whom God revealed things that were sealed since the time of Daniel, the prophet. Sealed up till the end times. Go your way, Daniel, until people run to and fro and knowledge is increased. That's our day today, brethren, during these last 100 years. And it was through one man, Herbert Armstrong, that God revealed those things sealed up. That puts him in an extremely special category. God gave him special knowledge. God made him work through a lot of things in the Bible. Oh, man, there were some tedious Bible studies at Ambassador College, laboring, especially in those early years, laboring through things to figure out that Mr. Armstrong just says in one or two sentences now, and here's the way it is, brethren. It took him weeks and months and months and months sometimes to learn those things he can tell you in one or two sentences before God let him know. And God made him study every element and prove it to the nth degree. Now, you can easily prove it. It's everything mapped up for you so simple now. You just check the sources and yeah. That's what it says. Well, could you have figured that out before God revealed it to Mr. Armstrong, putting Mr. Armstrong through great labor to find this that leads to that, and that leads to another thing, and now we see the whole picture. Whew! After laboriously working it out. And so, brethren, where are we today? How much time we have, and where are we tonight with this Bible study? Well, I have about 15 minutes left. So, what am I doing with this fast? I've encouraged those of you who want to voluntarily join me in doing this, and asking God during this fast to unify, truly unify. Some have used a word that's kind of close to that in verbiage for their church group, their vanity plate, named this or that, banana peeling this, banana peeling that, blankety blank, named Church of God group. And in closing tonight, I'm going to spend a few minutes telling you and reminding you what God did through a 50-year minister of Alabama, Mr. Robert Collins, which sets a precedent for all of the rest of you ministers who did what Mr. Collins did, but who have not yet done what God had Mr. Collins do after God corrected Mr. Armstrong, and intends to correct the rest of the body of Christ through Mr. Collins' example. And so, brethren, you who hear me tell of this would do well to tell your fellow brethren, and those fellow brethren are yourself. Tell the ministers you've been attending services under for years and years, under some vanity plate banana peeling, blankety blank named this or that Church of God group, that they need to hear what God did through Robert Collins, 50-year Alabama minister Robert Collins, who was ordained at a Feast of Tabernacle in Big Sandy, Texas in the early 60s by God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong. And I'm going to jump to that. We'll come back and finish up what I left out here about this escape and God opening up a big sinkhole to swallow the army of the devil that's going to chase those that counted worthy to escape. We'll do that during the Sabbath service in the morning. We'll also have Mr. Armstrong speaking then. I know I said he was going to speak tonight. I have him queued up. Maybe I'll have him say a few words before we close, and then we're going to play a sermon. I already played this just a week ago, but we're going to play portions of it again in the morning. I'm going to emphasize some things from that sermon that you should take note of. And if you're fasting with me, especially to take note of and put it into your prayer before God, as we ask God on this Sabbath, this fasting day Sabbath, to take notice of our being scattered, which God himself did. And he hasn't ended that scattering yet, brethren. There's no one church that represents the church of God. There's no one body, not yet, and there may not be until God gathers us up for the great escape. By great escape, I mean for escaping the great tribulation. That God provides that escape to those who he will account worthy of it, who do the watching and the praying called for in Luke 21:36, in the verse now on your screen. But so what is this about Mr. Collins? I'll tell you more details in the morning. I'm just going to summarize it for you tonight here, and that's this. God allowed Mr. Robbins to be hospitalized with a full body cancer. And once his time in the hospital expired and the doctors said, Mr. Collins, you only have 3 weeks left to live. We tried everything we could. They did chemotherapy, they did surgery, they did, what's that third thing they do? Radiation. They did all of that. It didn't work. It had frankly made him worse. And yet, God told Mr. Collins while he was in that hospital, Mr. Collins, I'll heal you. I will completely heal you. But I'm going to require something of you. First, before I heal you, you're going to have to go tell the group that you put a vanity plate, banana peeling, blankety blank modifier, adjective, before the words Church of God. You're going to have to tell them that we're going to take the name off that group. You'll just be assembling as the Church of God. And so Mr. Collins went to them and he told them what God told him while he was in the hospital. We're going to take the name off of this group. And they went into, like ancient Israel, they went into a major rebellion, as ancient Israel was apt to do right in front of Moses' face. And they said, well, no, Mr. Collins, we like this name. We like this group. We love it, in fact. And if you're going to do that, you just don't come back here anymore. Now, he had been holding meetings in a hotel in Bessemer. They had quite a number of people coming for a while, but then God put him in the hospital, and the people dwindled down. A few of them started meeting in a home, but kept that name going, especially those who helped him start it. Oh, we love this name. We're going to keep it going. And if you're going to try to take it away from us, you just don't come. You know, Mr. Collins had offered, even though we're taking the name off the group, I'll still conduct services for you on the Sabbath each Sabbath. I'll still minister to you, do the anointings that you need, etc., etc. But they said, oh, no, you not. You take the name away from us on this vanity plate Church of God group. Oh, you take our worshiped name away from us. That's a bottom line. You out of here, Mr. Collins. Even though it was yours, it's ours now. You ain't using it. We keeping it. We love it. It's our group. It's us. And so they kicked him out. No, they kicked me out first. I'll tell you about that in the morning for those of you that want to know. When Mr. Collins first told them what he was doing, they all pointed the finger at me and said, "This is Stephen's fault. Stephen, you get out." And they escorted me out of their meeting place. It was at one of the brethren's homes, a big home. It handled the brethren who were there, quite a few in that big living room. I sat in the very back row when the service first started. One of them insisted I move up to the front row. "Oh, you drove Mr. Collins over? Well, you should be up here in a seat of honor." "Oh, no, I'm happy back here." But they insisted. So I relinquished. I went and sat on the front row. I'd done that once or twice when I was assisting Mr. Rader's family and drove his wife home a few times. So that wasn't a super big deal with me in one way, but I preferred being in the back, and I knew what Mr. Collins was going to say. I preferred to be on the back, but they insisted I be in the front. And guess how that worked out? They moved me from the back to the front, and then they moved me totally out of the house. Because after Mr. Collins started saying we're taking the name off of this group, and the people said, "That's his fault. That's Stephen's fault." Then they said, "You got it out, Stephen. You're out." And they escorted two of the big guys, escorted me out. I said, "Well, I'm driving Mr. Collins in the car. You can stay at the car, but you can't come into the meeting." "Well, thank you. Would you please let Mr. Collins know I'm going to be here for him when he finishes, the service. I'll be here to drive him home." I had to be. He had to have somebody with him to get out of the hospital and not be sent to a nursing home. He had to have a 24/7 caregiver, and it wound up being me. He asked me would I do it. The state approved me, and I was not only approved by the state, but I was required by the state to stay there with him. So, and to be his caregiver. He was able to come preach the sermon, and they still used a wheelchair. But so when it was all over, they wheeled him out. I helped him in the car, drove him home. He told me on the way back, he said, "Well, Stephen, they're not letting me come back anymore." I said, "Well, they didn't even let me stay for the meeting, as you know." So I said, "What did you tell them? I didn't get to hear it in person." So he told me right after he'd done it. So he gave me a fresh memory telling of what he told them. Well, I told them what I've told you before, how God told me while I was in the hospital that I take the name off the vanity plate name off the group. Just call us the Church of God, and that's it. They didn't like it. They want to keep the name. They're going to keep meeting with that name. I said, "Oh, how interesting this is. Wow." So he sent them a cease and desist letter and said, "No, you can't keep using this name." And at first they said, "Yes, we are." And, no, when he first just told them you can't keep using his name, they said, "Yes, we are." And so he then firmed it up with a writing, a formal attorney-styled cease and desist letter. And it took them about 3 weeks, but they came over like little spring chickens and brought back all the books that had that vanity plate name on it, all the songbooks and all the cassette tapes of recordings of his past sermons that had that vanity plate Church of God name on the cassette labels. They brought them all back and said, okay, we're not going to use the name anymore. Don't sue us. And but we're still going to keep meeting ourselves and keep our group going. And that was one of the problems with the vanity plate names that God told Mr. Collins. They create a group identity thing that is, instead of we being one church, one body, it creates, he had a name for it. It was pretty good. Let's see if I can get it out of my long-term memory. I'll think of it by the morning. Little groupies, where, we are us and they are them. But you really should be part of all one big family, one big body. But no, other groups make us now separate and individual from them. And is that not what these multiple dozens and dozens and hundreds of small and medium-sized vanity plate Church of God groups, brethren. Is that not what it has done? Create that type of mentality. And it also hides from people something God wants us to be aware of, very aware of, and cognizant of, and that is that God has he not, brethren, scattered us. We're not one big body. Some that are in these larger vanity plate Church of God groups tend to forget everybody else and say, hey, we just came over from worldwide Church of God to now the ABC or XYZ, whatever the name of your vanity plate, banana peeling, blankety blank, this or that Church of God group is called. We just come over here. Now to us, this big group where we meet called the blankety blank Church of God group, well, that's God's church now. It just came over here from worldwide. And there are hundreds of others saying the same thing, but they're not part of your group. And what happened to what Christ said in Matthew 16, verse 18? And we'll close on that tonight, brethren. We'll close on that one verse. Very critical verse, very significant verse. I'm going to punch it up on the screen for you if you want to turn there with me. I'm going to Matthew chapter 16, and in chapter 16, we're going to verse 18, and I have that on the screen for you. And let's read that together, shall we? And I say unto you, I say unto you, that you are Peter. And the original Greek word for that means little rock, little Peter. And upon this rock, the word Petros, or big rock, meaning Jesus Christ. So Christ is saying, upon me, this rock, but you're part of this rock as a little pebble part of it. One era of 7 eras of the Spring Harvest Church. Upon this rock, boulder, I will build my church. And one rock, it may have 7 eras to it, Peter representing that Ephesian first era, but then they're coming along 6 other eras to follow it. And all of that, all 7 eras, part of the big rock, the Petros, huge boulder rock, Jesus Christ, upon himself. But you, all of you are part of it. It's not just me alone. It's, the church is composed of many members. 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12. But it also says those many members are what, brethren? How many bodies? Dozens, like we see today with all these vanity plate named bodies, Church of God bodies, groups? No, God said it's one body, many members, but one body. I said we'll close on Matthew 16, 18, and where Christ says, I will build my church, and even goes on to add that even if you get scattered later on, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. It's still one body, one church. It's just like in the beginning days of the work when people listened to the radio, one person in one city, one person in another city, miles away. We were scattered, but as God called them into the spring harvest, they became part of one body. But initially, they were scattered all over the place. And that's what we are now. Each individual is scattered here and scattered there. During COVID, when you couldn't assemble together, we should have got the point. Hey, we are scattered. I wish God had had me speaking more boldly at that time. But, brethren, God, as I yield myself to him, is leading me, as I think some of you see, to speak stronger and stronger. And God has expressly told me, Stephen, part of your big calling and the commission I've given you is to preach what I did through Robert Collins. So you might get tired of hearing that if you tune in here, brethren, often. And I hope you do, because God has me speak about other things too, but he's told me expressly to not, I don't mean he came to me face to face, but in essence he did by speaking to my mind, has told me to preach this. Don't forget to preach what I've commissioned you to preach. about what I did as a precedent through Robert Collins that the rest of the ministry should learn of, and they either have to follow through and do what he did and suffer as he suffered, but also learn wisely how you can make that work. Just be ready to anticipate how brethren will love their name and want to keep it. So you're going to need to prepare them for it. And perhaps after this fast, he'll give me some express instruction I can share with you, fellow ministers, on how to deal with your brethren if you're going to follow what God wants you to do in following the precedent he did through Robert Collins, having him take the vanity plate name off your group. So we'll be talking about that more in the morning. Those of you that are just catching what I'm doing tonight, maybe for the first time, I hope you'll share it with your fellow brethren and ministers and say, hey, we need to encourage our minister, even if not while he's live, but we need to encourage him to tune in to one of these archived videos of Stephen Gilbert's live stream where he explains what God did through Robert Collins and required him to take the vanity plate name off of their vanity plate group. Why is God doing that now? Brethren, are you not watching the world news and seeing how close we are to round 3 of World War? And remember what God's end-time apostles told us? Did he not tell us, brethren, that round 3 of World War will commence at the beginning of the Great Tribulation, Seal 5, which will commence with a blitzkrieg against the United Kingdom and against the United States, fulfilling Ezekiel 6:6. We'll talk about that more in the morning. We're out of time tonight. Thank you for joining me, brethren, as we start. Those of you who voluntarily are joining me in doing this, I'm doing fine. I hope you are. Of course, it's in the early hours of the fast for this Sabbath, church-wide fast for unity of the Church of God and an understanding of how God has scattered us and how that even through the scattering, we should not have or be calling ourselves members of any denomination of men, any organization of men that includes any one of these many vanity plate Church of God groups in existence today, that the leaders of should do as Mr. Collins was required by God to do. Take the name off of the group. The group's going to love you, but you got to do it. All right, brethren, that's our Bible study for tonight. We'll pick up where we left off here in the morning. You're invited to join us. Let me see if I get the slide here. You're invited to join us. Well, that says for the Bible study. That's supposed to say for the, here, let me change that real quick. That's supposed to say you can join us for the Sabbath service in the morning. So I think I can make a quick switch right here. Does this do it? Yeah, here we go. All right, you're invited to join us for the Sabbath service at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on cogtv.org. You can get to that by typing sabbath.tv. I encourage you to check out our website. If you can't find us on social media, we simulcast and live stream right on the homepage of our website. At the same time, we live stream on Facebook Live and on Sabbath and on YouTube Live. On Facebook Live, we're on the Sabbath service page. On YouTube Live, we're on the Sabbath service channel. And you can get to our homepage. Right on the homepage, we have a window right below the banner at the top. That window below the banner. When we're streaming live, it fills in with the live stream. When we're not streaming, it's just a blank window. But when we're streaming, you'll see our live stream in it. You may have to click the icon for the speaker that turns on the audio, that keeps the audio off if you don't click that button, that speaker icon button. But we'll be there in the morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That'll be 3:30 p.m. in the UK, 5:30 p.m. in Israel and other parts of the Middle East for the Sabbath service. So you're invited to join us. We'll pick up with where we left off from tonight. Brethren, thank you for joining me. Until the morning, hope you have a good night's sleep. I'm going to end by wishing you a very happy Sabbath Shabbat Shalom.